My name is Erik Van Horn. I bought my first franchise in my 20s, and since then, I've owned 6 brands with 25 stores in 8 states. I've also helped 1,000 people find the right franchise for them. People like us who are not cut out for the 9 to 5 and like to work smarter, not harder. How do we find the right franchise, buy it, grow it, sell it, and how do we do it in a way to own the business without it owning us? Those are the questions, and I'm on a mission to give you the answers. Welcome to Franchise Secrets. Hey, welcome to the Franchise Secrets podcast with your host, Erik Van Horn. Today's guest is Aaron Gillaspie. Aaron and I met quite a few years ago at an actual discovery day of a different brand that I was a part of and he was looking at. And we ended up talking about salon suites. And it was really interesting at that time because he had an investor that was going to invest into him. The investor wanted to buy into him and it didn't really matter about the brand. And so I'd left that company. He didn't join that company, but we've stayed in touch ever since. And we've actually become competitors along the way. So we'll have some fun with that. But Aaron, I'm super excited to get into this show with you. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I look forward to it. And like you say, it's a journey in franchising of some of the paths we crossed just by a discovery day that has led to, like you say, like-minded things we've invested in and stories that we can all laugh about and some we probably can't laugh about.
Exactly. Well, we'll even talk about some of those things that are not fun to laugh about. And I think people get a lot of value out of that. But why don't we go back to the beginning? Like, who in the heck are you? Where did you, how did you get started in entrepreneurship and franchising?
Yeah, so I've kind of always had the bloodline of an entrepreneur. And I say that because I watched my dad growing up, who, again, did some innovative stuff, worked for himself and kind of became a boss. But ultimately, I always worked growing up and I had that whole mentality. My grandpa was an entrepreneur. My dad kind of did some stuff, dabbled in it. And then I got to, and I've always worked since I can remember back to 12, 13 years old. I've had a job. It's just the way it was. And I always liked being a leader. I always liked having a say, which is probably a good quality and a bad quality. But started my first company in college and dabbled in landscaping. I did some stuff with all this and had some fun with it. And I always knew that I loved founding things and being a visionary. And so out of college, I actually went and I was a teacher. I did Teach for America out of college, which people always say, how the heck does that have anything to do with entrepreneurship? You would be shocked, folks. You try to run a classroom, it can shock you. And so I ran a 7th, 8th grade classroom and I founded the curriculum. This was a new school. So I was a founder of curriculum without teaching a day in my life, which might be set up for failure, but got to do that. And then had some opportunities and such success doing that gotten some radars, got some awards, and got to found some schools from scratch, literally designing schools.
And how old were you at this time designing these schools from scratch?
22 years old, because every 22-year-old should be given the keys and the budget to do that.
100%.
So a lot of it was entrepreneurship from that young age. So the reason I talk about the school path is we design schools, and these were charter schools. And so people, before you turn off the podcast in the first 5 minutes, always ask me, does that mean I love charters or public or private? I like great schools. Let's just make this very clear before we go any further. There's great in everything and there's miserable in everything. Same with franchising.
That's right. That's exactly it.
But I say that because we founded something from scratch, a school that did not exist. So I got a residency to go see the best and the worst of education, from public, private, charter, Catholic, you name it. I've seen it over a residency of a year to found a school from scratch. If you talk about entrepreneurship without a franchising model, we stole best practices, but we invented the model from scratch. Uniforms, this, that, teachers. I mean, everything was made up off best practices and did that and had amazing success at it. And along the way, I had some incredible mentors in the business sector that came along and kind of took me under their wing of mentoring me while running schools. And one of them that I mentored had always said, if I ever want to leave education, not that I ever should, I was great at it, but don't think I ever couldn't do whatever I want to set my mind to, because he believed in my visionary and my sense of passion, and that he knew I wanted to succeed at whatever I did. And when I decided to get married and take the plunge, I decided that we were going to move near family, and that kind of changed the trajectory of my life. And there was never going to be a right time to leave the schools, and love it, miss it all the time. But when I came down and decided we were going to live near family, it took a different shape for me of, do I want to stay in education or not? And at that time in my life, I was 27 years old. It was everything I wanted to do had too long of a trajectory to do in education, because I knew it was going to take 150 hour weeks for 2 or 3 years to set it back up down here. And all the other opportunities I had down here were going to put me in a box that I was probably going to, and I'll say this in a PC way, piss some people off if I was in a box too much. And so it led me to turn to this mentor of mine and say, hey, that idea you had about business and buying into me, what did you have? And that's when he turned to me and he goes, I never said I had an idea. I just bought into you and your passion, your dedication. What did you have in mind? And one thing led to another. And that's when he said to me, how about we set you up with some people I know in business and you come back with an idea. And if it's that you work for someone else, it's you work for someone else. If it's you want to, invent a company, then we work on if that's feasible. If you want to buy into other companies, but you come back with a plan and present it to me. And if I like it, I'll buy into it with you. If I don't, we'll figure out something at that time.
When smart, successful people find the jockey, not the horse, they put that out there. And I'm sure he wasn't always hounding you like, come on, we need to go in to do this. He threw it out there, and it's up to you at that point to be like, I'm going to take something. I'm going to take this relationship and help both of us out. I mean, at what 100%. Point did you realize like, man, he's serious?
I was blessed to know he was serious because when I was running schools, I got to know him and I helped have a relationship with him and his family and his kids around mentoring them. And so it became a very close-knit, almost like a family tie without being a family tie, of just knowing that it was more than a business relationship. It was I care about you as a human being relationship, but I also trust you. He trusts me with his kids. I trust him with my kids. And ultimately there was that, but it wasn't true family bloodline or anything like that. But I guess you just know. It's like dating someone. How do you know when you're ready to marry? It's not like there's some formula. It's just, there's that trust there. I literally would do for him what I would do for my parents or anyone else, just because we had that trust.
Give some context into like who he is. This is not somebody that, owns a local business like you or I and invests into somebody. This is somebody that's significantly more than that.
Correct. So for me, it has nothing to do with if someone has money. I know a lot of people have family money or have heritage, or uncle wants to buy them a business or they get into that. And that's, again, there's good and bad in that. I'll say a lot of the experiences I've seen are bad because it's someone that doesn't buy into maybe someone with a track record. They just buy into it, someone's cousin, nephew, niece, and I've watched it just go nuts. Mine was a business guy that he has a huge portfolio of businesses and has a very big track record of it. But the coolest thing about this guy is not only would you never know if you met him on the street, because it's one of the most humble people I've ever met in my life when it comes to that, but he has a track record of buying into people. Maybe not in the instance he did with me, but when I've watched his people move throughout his companies or to do that, he doesn't lose. He's not a cutthroat boss. He has a track record of buying into people. That's his secret sauce. Is he finds the jockeys, and he already has great horses, but he lets the jockeys do what the jockeys are supposed to do. And that was unlike anything I'd seen. And I've had a lot of mentors who are very successful in business that I've watched do the opposite. And there's nothing wrong with that approach. It's just his was always buy into people, let people flourish, and call me if there's an emergency.
How much does he micromanage you today?
He trusts me an extremely lot that we do our monthly calls over our budgets, our yearly budgets. But outside of that, he's never been down to Texas to see one of our stores, if that shows you. And it has nothing to do with that. He just doesn't micromanage because he doesn't trust me. He knows what's going on. He knows the numbers, but he doesn't have to step foot in our store when he lives up in New York where our schools were and run stuff there. But he has enough of a pulse, and his questioning is so high level. I love it. I do a lot of it now with my staff, that he has a very good pulse on everything, but he doesn't micromanage anything.
What are some of the questions that you're like, wow, that was a good question, and then you've started to implement yourself?
Greatest question, when I got off a call and he had a call with some other bigger investors, he goes, Aaron, I got to go, but I have one question I want you to think about for next month. How long until we have some lawsuit or some major thing goes wrong within our company? And we'll talk about it next month. And I was like, what the hell does he mean by that? Like, I literally panicked, Eric. I was like, what does that mean? Like, at that time, we owed stuff in different beauty sectors. We owned some franchises and some other stuff. But I was like, does that mean like our employee does something? Does that mean like I get sued because a customer doesn't like something? So I literally like panicked. I wanted to like email him, like, what do you mean by this? But I didn't. And so I probably spent the next 3 or 4 hours, like literally almost being like, what? Is it like a secret? Is this like one of those Google questions where there's a hidden meaning? So I started to think about it. And then I asked my wife, I'm like, how do I read into this? I spent the next probably 40 hours over the month diagnosing. Does he mean like insurance stuff that we have in place? And like what insurance do we have? Do we have director and operation insurance? Do we have this to cover him from he's an investor in our company? What about at the granular level? What if one of my employees does something really, crazy? There's training and we've done it, but what if they go off the deep end? What about if someone trips on the sidewalk? Do we have insurance for that? Like all these little things I'm thinking about, like, what do you mean by sued? Like, is this a major lawsuit? Or is this a minor thing? Or is this a threat of a sue? Or is it just that we lost a lot of money? And I thought of it and I went through everything. I called our insurance agent. I mean, I literally went through craziness only to get back on the phone with him a month later, have all this stuff deep dive, like 4 pages of documents, all this stuff. So Aaron, how long until something major happens and we, maybe get sued to this? And I go, probably in the first 6 months. Minor will happen of an employee doing something that's just a malpractice, not like a big lawsuit, but like something where we have to get cops involved with petty theft or inappropriately doing something that shouldn't be happening, drugs on. I don't know. And it might be not a lawsuit, but a loss. But we do have these practices in our training in place. And we do have, insurance for this and this and this. And then probably in the first 5 years, we will have some stupid lawsuit over something that's just ludicrous. But I think it might be this or this. But again, I can't stop some of these. He goes, oh, that's great. He goes, so what else do you want to talk about today? I go, wait, what the hell happened to you? He goes, I just wanted to make sure you thought the thing through. And as long as you didn't come back with a ludicrous answer like 5 years will be our first small hiccup, and you thought it through. That's all I need to know. And like, you got to be shitting me.
and that's someone that trusts in you. I mean, and think about it from our standpoint. And I'm a bit ahead of you in how I'm managing my business as operational partners. I'm nowhere near, nor will I ever be where he is. And you probably will be. I mean, you'll probably be there someday. But as I look at my organizations and that if I give little direction, I give a statement or I give something, it's not for them to come back to me with a million questions. I know I have the right person if they can go and figure it out and then stew on it for a day, a month, whatever it is, and come back with an answer. And that's the person that doesn't want to be micromanaged. So I love that.
Well, another story on that was actually funny. Part of the things he's always taught me is all the good stuff, and we want you to get awards. We want to be that. I can cheerlead you on. But the reality is I don't need to really know about that. I expect you to be doing that stuff. But when there's an emergency or there's something major that comes up, you need to let me know immediately. And that's always been the tricky thing of like, what's the definition of an emergency in their world compared to my world? Yeah. And I'll never forget one day I texted him when we had an issue with our first build out in one of the brands we owned. And there was a plumbing issue where in the ground, it was cast iron. And we found out after we opened, they were supposed to replace everything by architecture plans, but they didn't. And we had feminine products that were getting stuck and we could go to this. Well, the only answer was to dig and excavate about $20,000 worth of work to get it done in 3 days. Had to shut down business and that. But the problem is we couldn't get we only had a TCO, but we wanted to get a CO. But we just trained all these employees. Like, how do you shut down for a week? Like, what do you do? I don't know what I'm doing. You make it up as you go. So I text this guy and I say, emergency, need you to call me. I'm panicking. I'm like literally crying in my car going, I don't even know what to do. He calls me and goes, Aaron, is everything okay? Is your health okay? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, and what's the emergency? And I explained, well, we have about a $20,000 cost. I don't know what to do, but also how do I pay these employees? Because they're expecting to work this week, but if I don't pay them and they're hourly, like how does this work? And this is my first week with them. He goes, so what are the options? I go, well, we do the $20,000 fix and we pay people a stipend to keep them happy for the 3 days in their first couple of days of work. And it costs us about $25,000, $26,000. Option B, we don't fix it. And then we have these issues every day. And option C is we don't pay them anything because we legally don't have to. And some might walk on us, some might not. They don't have their first week of pay and all this. He goes, so what's the question? I go, what do you mean? He goes, Aaron, you just trained all these people. You've paid them all. You really are going to like spend hours chasing more people to try to hire more people to train more people? You got to pay them and you got to fix it. He goes, so do me one favor. You know the answer. You already answered the answer. Now go do it. I understand money matters, so we'll get you the extra money if you need it for that. But you don't have a choice. Yep. And next, don't text me an emergency unless you're dying because it's not an emergency. And I was like, oh. Okay, in my world it was, but again, it's all relative.
It is all relative.
I've had a lot more of those emergencies that aren't emergencies because you learn how to navigate the water.
And once you start to learn, I mean, you do that and then you're like, wait, this next thing is not an emergency. I was just with Walter O'Brien and he's the TV show Scorpion was based off of this guy, higher IQ than Einstein. And so I had a few dinners with him last week and just pummeled him with questions, and he had answers within nanoseconds. But one of the things that he talked about a lot was this type of thing. Like, are you prepared for this, for whatever it is, a lawsuit? And so there's a lot of questions like this that we should be asking ourselves as business owners, and it helps us be prepared. And so the emergencies aren't quite emergencies. So yeah, that's really good. How did you so he bought into you? Anything else around that advice that you would give somebody that has somebody that is looking at them, or they want to get the attention of somebody to be their mentor or to invest in them?
Yeah, I think there's two differences you got to go down the path. One, it's no different than getting an investment group or stuff that you are more familiar with, or these people that go to banks. You got to have a freaking plan, people. So the minute you don't have a plan and someone buys into you, no offense, you and them both are idiots, in my opinion, because they're buying into you and you basically are set up for failure because it's just a nightmare to start with. So I always pretend, I don't care if it's the bank, I don't care if it's an investment group, I don't care if it's your uncle who's giving you the money or your wife's family, I don't care. Have a plan. And I don't mean I had a plan on day one to go, I'm going to invest in this many My Salon Suites, I'm going to own this and I'm going to own that. No, but it's study the environment, know it. I played college football. You don't just sit there and tell somebody that doesn't know what a down and in at 10 yards is to go do a down and in, and then you threw the ball and you threw it at 5 yards. They were going 15 yards. You got to be on the same page somewhere to at least know where to start. And I think that's the key, is make sure you have something to plan. One thing I did, and this is how you and I met, Erik, people listening to this will think I'm nuts, and it's probably why my hairline is gone by now. It's odd to be in beauty space and have a hairline like this, yes. But the kicker I did is I've now read over 100 FDDs. And before I ever bought into our first franchise, I'd read over 50 of those. I'd been to over 15 discovery days. And some of those, and the people listening probably will want to punch me for this, I went to knowing I wasn't even going to invest in their companies because I wanted to gain as much information in my arsenal about things that I could, to know as much as I can and talk to as many people like yourself and a lot of these other great people that are out there, because this is your livelihood. This is something you're signing up for. You want to have every training you can. But the opposite is sooner or later, you got to pull the trigger.
Yep.
Can't just do it forever. It's like validation calls. Sooner or later, when I do those all the time, you got to go, there's someone's waiting on a decision and you're never going to have all the answers. Sometimes you just got to go have the baby. The baby will solve a lot of problems. It'll also create problems. But I think that's something that I did very differently, is I went to an extreme, and some people are like, but I have a full-time day job. I can't do that. I don't have the money to do that. I get that, but you got to do enough to have your plan in place to have answers, so that I don't know everything about when I'm going to be sued, but I thought it through. I don't know about what franchise I was going to invest in. And if you looked back at where I thought I was going to be compared to where I are today, I'm sure the same as you. It's like, holy shit, I deviated that path, but the end goal was the same. If it's monetary or if it's lifestyle or if it's blank, and those always adapt, the 2 5-year plan compared to the 20. But if you don't go in with a plan at all, you basically are planning to fail.
Now, let's be clear. We never worked together as a franchise consultant, as myself and you as a candidate. I probably would have written you off at number 5 as you were going through Discovery Day number 5 and would have fired you. But you were working with one of the best out there. He's a good buddy of mine, Rick Bizio, and he's a fantastic guy. At the end of the day, there's only a handful of us consultants that
know what they're doing.
Know what they're doing.
I would say franchise consultants are like franchises.
Yep.
Everyone thinks it's like real estate. They think everything's good. But the reality, I'll tell you this, because again, we know each other personally, we haven't done business now. There's 4 or 5 of you that always get talked about in the franchise circle. And at the end of the day, the fees and the stuff going on behind the scenes, I want the A team. Therefore, the people like you and the Bizios of the world are the A team. Nothing against all the others. They're nice people, nothing personal. But you want the A team.
When you go in and do the type of due diligence that you do, if you are working with the A team, and now there's just so many more tools and resources that all of us that are on that, that level put out to people, it makes the due diligence, the research process, and the ultimate decision-making process so much easier.
I believe it's easier, but I also get scared of it because it's like an FDD. Item 19 only goes as far as item 19 goes. And I say that because everyone on this item 19 being the financials. Yes, there's an ethical way that they have to follow or they're illegal, but there's math teacher in me. There's truth, lies, and statistics. And so you'll see if you look at enough of them that you want to get to know more than just an FDD document. You want to know the people. You want to understand the finances. The biggest question I always wanted to understand is, that's great that this is the averages, but what about in my markets if I'm working in certain markets? What about things like this? So I always say, it's good that there's all this data out there, but most people don't understand that you got to manipulate the data to form the story that you needed to understand
And
rather than trust everything.
Yep. And you can't take it at face value. I think the best consultants out there will tell you that, and they'll give you the questions to ask and poke around, because sometimes, and we'll get onto a different subject, but like with the FDD, since we're here, if it's a one-time event for one store or a one franchise location, and it's looking really big, and you don't uncover that it was a one-time event or an anomaly over here, that's how people look. They look back, and it was truth in the FDD, but it was, everybody, in my opinion, is spinning those FDDs, and you, as the person looking at it, need to know the questions to ask to see what the truth is behind it. Even though it's accurate numbers, there's a slant to it.
But I always say the biggest thing to think about in business is your market is different than that FDD. FDD covers wherever they're currently at. Yep. And you're right. Some of these people, when you do validation, they already have it in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm going to be in Atlanta. So you can validate most accurately the people already there. But it's like, I just talked to somebody yesterday about Chick-fil-A versus Raising Cane's versus Zaxby's. Again, people like chicken. They can be in Houston. Houston's a big enough city, all this. But when you're third to market, like we were with one of our concepts, not those, but one of those concepts, being third to market has huge advantages in certain things, like the industries you and I have been in, solar, JC, because you know what the cards are, the real estate they've already played. But in other industries, being third to market, you just get slaughtered because of the advertising dollars you have to do and the cost to acquire a customer, where the FDD is focused on the Northeast region where they already have so many of this company and the marketing dollars is already there. And I think people miss that a lot because you got to focus on your relationship with what you want to do and your goals and your brand.
That's a great point, because sometimes being third to market is an advantage, but you got to look at what I do is I look at first and second to market, see how they're doing. And sometimes they get lazy. They're letting their foot off the gas. That's when it's okay. But I've researched other industries that I was about ready to buy into. And first to market there was just crushing it. And they had no signs of slowing down. And so I'm like, I'm out. I'm not going into that segment.
Oh, and we're doing it right now with the salon suites, even in different markets within that concept here in Texas. Some markets we're like, we're going to put on the pedal now because they're doing great. And others we're going, holy shit, this is nuts up here. It's the Wild West. And we're learning it's not just as easy as being a great operator. It's what is other people doing that matters. You can be as good as you want. Doesn't mean it's a great business decision to do it.
So let's talk about when things don't go as we thought they would go. So you have
always go how they should.
Yes. If you're talking to a franchise consultant that is just painting a rosy picture of everything, stop talking to them and talk to somebody that actually does talk about the hard stuff, because not everything works out the way that you want it to. And I know that's part of your story. You're going really strong with one brand and you're growing, but there was another one that was not worth your time to continue on. Can you dive into that story? Because I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah. So one thing we wanted to do when we built is to diversify brands, like anyone does, if it's franchising or not, to have a couple things in different pools, so you're not just banking on one thing, knocking out of the ballpark and you ran over. So we wanted to look at brands. One we wanted a reoccurring cash flow model. So it could be anything membership models, things in gym space, things in beauty space. There's lots of membership models out there. We wanted something in that from a cash flow standpoint. And then we wanted something in real estate and some other stuff. So we dabbed into both of those. The problem we ran into with the one that we invested in from a cash flow membership standpoint, it was third to market in the area we bought in. The two big competitors were much bigger and more powerful than we realized. Therefore, the cost to acquire a customer turned out way more expensive than we predicted. And it even turned out worse because in Metro Houston, it was a lot harder than in the suburbs of Houston with the data we had by all the other franchisees that owned in this brand. The cost to acquire a customer was about 1.5 times. I mean, that's a lot when you sit there and you look at the margins on some of these. But the killer we did, and we learned the hard way, is there's return on cash flow and models like that. And then there's this thing called return on time. And we talk about it. I remember Rick Bizio talking about it. I remember you and I talking about it. The other concept we were is how many employees do you have to have? How much do you really have to be hands-on? Versus how many of these models say they're absentee or semi-absentee and they're really not either, or they really are. And there's all these different models. And this one that we invested in, we learned the return on time mixed with some of the things that were one-offs. A one-off of the cost to acquire a customer. If we built more and we had the rights to build more, we could just stay away from that. We could go to the suburbs more and we had the right to. But the return on time to get there, because it was so employee driven and so typical retail driven.
Mm-hmm.
But if you didn't have the right manager or the right turnover here, it wasn't as simple as it was how much does it cost to acquire a customer? You get thousands of customers coming through the door. You want them to join memberships. Then you have all the employees. Then you have all the managers. There were so many layers that you either had to run the store single-handed, which this model actually would have been good if you were hands-on operator and that was your one store and that was all you were relying on, or you had to get really big quickly to have regionals and people in place and all that, which a couple other franchisees had done and done it very successfully.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't want to go down that route. We were getting beat up decently at this store from a return on investment to acquire a customer, some of the turnover that we had from a typical retail model. But the real killer is when you put your time on paper, the return on investment for time wasn't worth it. So we did what the saying goes, you took it out back and you shot it, as they put it on Shark Tank, right? That's what we did. And it's not that model doesn't work in other areas. It even works in Houston in certain ones. But for the return on time that we had, we were willing to get rid of it, even if it took skinning the cat and taking a little bit of a loss or only a little bit of a gain, compared to we knew if we held on to it for about 6 months to a year, we could do a multiple and make some money on it. But the time that it was worth to get that small of a margin was just not worth it versus putting all of our eggs. You go back to the jockey analogy. My business partner says this, you find the horses that win and you run with them, get rid of the losers. And it's the same thing on staffing. It's hard to say it that way, but you run with the winners, you get rid of the bad ones.
What I see a lot of people that they don't make that decision because they have a bunch of pride, they have ego, they don't want to be seen as a failure in their own eyes, their spouse's eyes, or their friends, or whatever. And ego prevents people from making decisions early on when it would not be as painful, and they end up losing a lot more money because they keep it. What was the mindset of your investor in that process?
For both of well, for him it was easy. For me, it wasn't easy because I pride myself on probably my ego on being a winner, being college athletics, getting all the awards I have. I like to title myself a winner, and maybe that's the ego, maybe it's all that, but it's the fact that I like to be part of winning. It's fun. Winning is exciting. Losing sucks. Having a failed relationship or a failed business sucks. But it also puts you where you are today. It doesn't mean you should walk around trying to fail, but it does build character. For my business partner, it was, Aaron, exactly the analogy I said. We want to sell it and we don't want to take a huge loss of this, but also we don't need it in our portfolio. It's not doing what we need to do. If we can get rid of it and offboard it at a price that works, do it. But we're not getting emotion. This isn't emotion. This is business. I think when he said that, it was like when my wife, again, they're off on a tangent, but that's good. When you're trying to breastfeed as a first wife of a mother and you have all this pressure in society telling you this and this. And then when the pediatrician's like, why don't you stop emotionally? It's okay. There's billions of people that have been born and not all of them did that. And it's okay. You're like, wait, what? I don't have, it's that pressure. So when he said that to me, it wasn't like, oh my God, we're just going to sell it. It was, it's okay. I need to focus on the winners. Hey, Aaron, it's okay. You're going to make it. And even if that means a loss by the time you do all the transaction fees and the lawyer fees, just don't spend all your time on it. Get rid of the loser or the low thing and go to the high thing and focus on that, because the return we'll get on focusing on these high things is way more than the loss here. But it's hard. It's still hard because I just don't like failing. And to this day, it sucks to talk about because I get literally like heartstrings about it. But it doesn't suck because now when I talk to other successful people, all of them have been there.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of how bad it's been. I can't afford payroll. I can't afford this. I tried to build and this one failed. I owned the sexy brand that all my friends loved. It's probably this brand. People loved that I owned it. I could hand out things. People loved it. It did community service. Awesome. But it didn't make money the way on time that it needed to. Therefore, what I own now is not as sexy. And I remember Rick Vizio asking me this. Is it sexy? I remember you and I talking about what the brand you had. Is it sexy? Some of these things that make money, if your goal is to make money, are not sexy. Then there's other people with their ego that need it to be sexy. They need to be there. And there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes you can't have both. And you got to be honest with yourself. And I think that was the thing I struggled with most, probably with Ricky would tell you, is I think in my head, I still wanted to be sexier, even though I thought it was about money, when really I should have been focused on the end result and the scalability of what the money and the systems could do versus the sexiness of it.
No, that's it. And when you are having to make that decision, especially when you have other businesses, maybe it's a job that you have and you have to put time into the job. You're losing money over here, but if you've got to take it out and look at it accurately and say, if nothing changes and I continue down this track record, where am I going to be? And it's probably going to be in a worse spot.
You hit the nail on the head. It's the whole saying, when you're in a hole, stop digging.
Yep.
But there's also the go back to the plan. You got to have a plan. You can't just go, I'm going to sell it tomorrow and quit. But you do have to ask yourself the return on emotion too. And again, I've gotten to this with counseling in churches and stuff like that. Really, it's talking about like the emotional aspect it plays on your life and how you then become a worse father and a worse husband. And worse. So there's a lot more than just that bottom line of digging the hole. But I get it. It's hard to lose 50, 100, 200, a million, whatever it is. It sucks. It doesn't get any easier.
No.
But sometimes it's the best of the cards you're dealt.
And I think one of the other points in that, as I look at decisions that I've made in my business life, is how much am I enjoying it? Like, if this sucks the life, I have a spreadsheet on all my businesses, and there's a spot on that spreadsheet that is like, how much am I enjoying this? And if that starts to go down, and there's not a way for that to come up, then I don't want to do that anymore. And I should not be putting my time into something that I don't enjoy. So I'm sure it became an enjoyment suck for you as well.
Oh, absolutely. It was literally like, again, that thing that at night kept you up and in the morning did. Yet if you focus that same energy on your winners, you would have made all that money back plus some.
Dude, two great things. I mean, finding a mentor. Don't try to get that mentor to buy into a business. Have them buy into you. And if you ever talk to me about that type of scenario, the first thing that I'll do to you if you're working with me is I want to get on the phone with that person to know that they're serious about it. And then I've been talking to a lot more people. I want to get this real accurate information. Not everything in franchising turns to gold. A lot of it doesn't. This is one of those that hasn't. Even though you've got the right jockey, there's also, you have to have the right horse. And that's why, don't double down or triple down if you've never done it before. Go into it with something that's not going to lose your entire life savings if you're about ready to invest into something, because then you'll be able to make the smart decisions versus keep digging when you shouldn't be digging anymore. What's your final parting wisdom, Aaron?
I think the biggest thing, like you say, is go back. Have a plan in whatever you're doing. If you have investors, if you have a single person, if you have that, if you're exiting and you're going, I'm that person actually right now, I'm already in it, Erik. I'm looking at new brands, but I got a bunch of things I should take out back and shoot. Have a plan of what that means. And I think here's the biggest key on it all. Define what success means.
Yep.
Because success for some people, again, when you get into this, it's money, 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 money. But when they really get to the root of it, it's not money. It's like trying to lose weight. People are like, I'll just eat healthier. Yeah, but if you're not working out and you're eating in moderation, it's a bigger thing. So you got to be honest with yourself about what success is. And for a lot of people, the only reason they want money is to do stuff with that money. So don't get all sucked into the money game when you really want to raise your kids and coach soccer, or you want to do vacations, or you want to do this. Because there's a very difference in earning a lot of money and knowing what to do with it and lifestyle. And I think a lot of us, and this is just general on a lot of things we do in life, and I'm still working on it, is being honest with yourself about what's success and where you want to be and why you want to be there. And it changes when you have kids, when you have businesses, when you scale it, things change, but you got to be honest with yourself to know that going in, just like you would if you had a mentor, you have a person buying into you. You got to be transparent and honest from day one. That way it's not day two. You're saying, well, I wanted this lifestyle, and why did we build this many Burger Kings or whatever? I mean, at the end of the day, you better be honest about what it looks like to be successful.
Well said. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.